when we were there in Kutno, in this lager, we stayed there, I think it was about 6 weeks. It was just terrible. There was no food. My father one day came without any wedding ring, and he brought me a glass of milk with a roll or piece of bread, because somebody else had a little bit more than other people. But in the end, they just didn't deliver any food inside in the camp. They were just throwing the food over the fences. It was just dreadful. In this same camp, my mother's brother with 4 sons were there. They had really 5 sons, but one son was in the Polish army, which we did not know what happened to him. And the cousin, who was my mother's cousins, who were looking after me when I was not well, they were also with a daughter, and their son lives now in America, which after the war I found out, which I will tell you later about it. Lucky that my uncle in Lubraniec, my father's brother, was one of the Judenälteste, and one of the letters which we were sending from the beginning when we got into the camp got to him. He received it. And I don't know how he has done it, but a policeman, a German policeman, not a assessman, but a policeman, came with a letter to the camp, and they let us out. So that was very, very lucky, because none of these people are alive, and I really don't know what happened to them.
Can you explain how you got out and what led up to you?
Yes, we went by the German policeman came, and they called us out. They called us, and because, as you understand, it was also like a little office there where Jewish people were working there. It was only 11,000, that time maybe already 10,000 Jewish people, because they were dying there. What were they doing with the bodies? I don't know. I was just too young to understand all this, what was happening. Just was not penetrating. And nobody was working there in this camp. Nobody was doing anything. They just put us there. And I don't know how long these people were there, because, as I said, we were only 6 weeks lucky. And when we got, what can I explain? It was just, people were starving. And I think typhoid got into it, because they start throwing food over the fences. I just don't know. God was just with us to let us out from there. Just a miracle.
Who was throwing food over the fence?
I don't know. The Germans were coming, or whoever, or the Poles would. I don't know. They were just throwing food.
And inside this camp, there were a whole group of people. Just sitting, just standing.
They just don't do nothing. So of course, that was like black market. Some people maybe knew somebody who was bringing some food in, and they were paying them money, or they had still jewelry. You see, we didn't have anything anymore, because when they took us to the sugar factory, they took everything away from us.
Yes.
We couldn't take anything with us. And anyway, we didn't have much. We already left our home over a year, and we didn't have anything with us anymore. I told you the few whatever my mother had, the jewelry and some possessions, they were sent to Warsaw to my father's friend, when we never heard anything about it anymore, because that time was a protectorate. What that meant, I don't know. They put the people like also in a ghetto, and the Jewish people were living already also separate. But in a ghetto, when you are, you still work for the Germans, and they give you food for it, and which I come to it later. When I was in the ghetto, I explained to you. and I can't remember anything from this Krapier lager. I only know that it was terrible. Some other people gave us 2 beds and some linen, covers to sleep on, because the other people came direct from Kutno.
Yes.
And they were allowed to take whatever they could. But these people, I told you, 2-3 weeks ago, they took the richest people from Kutno, and I explained to you before, and we couldn't take anything. We went like we stood practically.
You had shelter to sleep in.
Oh yes, in this sugar factory.
In the sugar factory.
Which
so you were sleeping indoors.
Oh yes, indoors,
and
but
the Germans just left you.
Like that.
Alone.
No, that's right.
For 6 weeks.
Yes. Yes.
Can you estimate how many other people were there?
As I said, I think it was 11,000. I don't remember how many people were in Kutno. I don't remember, I don't know. But all the people from the Kutno, from this town, were brought in the night to this factory.
And just before you called it something lager.
A Krapier lager. It's a death camp.
Ah, right, I see. That's Polish.
Yes, no, German. Krapier is German.
Krapier.
Yes, Krapier is German, and death camp is in English.
Right.
And
So do you now know how it was that you got your release?
through my uncle, he sent this letter with this German. This German came right up to this camp and spoke to the people who were in charge, because I think in the office there were some Germans as well in charge. But whatever we had to do, they used to tell the Jewish people or sweep or whatever, but we did not do any work direct to the Germans like you used to do in a ghetto.
No, you didn't.
They just didn't keep us. They just throw bits and pieces and that's it. And who had some money? If some people, of course, you know how it is, some people knew people, and they had a little bit more, so they were selling things, you see. And when we got by train, he took us by train, we had to walk to the trains.
With the German?
With the German.
But what did the piece of paper say? How was your father released? You don't know.
This I don't know. We never saw the paper.
Ah.
We never saw the paper. They called us up, and we dressed ourselves, and we went.
Because your uncle had some influence.
Yes, because he was a Juden Ältester, as I explained to you before.
Yes.
He was chosen to help who should go to work and where they should go to work and how many people have to go to work to do this job and that job, sweeping streets or whatever. I explained to you before.
Yes, you did.
And when we got to Lubraniec by train, we had to also change another train because the big trains did not go to Lubraniec, the steam trains. It used to call Kolejka. It's like it's a train which is a small train, not a big one. I don't know how to explain in English.
A steam train?
No, that was probably a steam train,
Yes.
but a little train. It's like with me, it's becoming like a nightmare. I can't remember everything. I don't know.
You can't expect to remember everything.
Oh, it's just. Anyway, we were there. We had to wear. Everybody knew the Jewish people, so of course we had to wear all the stars in front of the garment and the back of the garment, and we had to walk on the middle of the road. We were not allowed to walk on the pavements, and they left us alone. They used. I'm sorry. I have to correct myself. That is not true. They did not leave us alone. The synagogue was already burned before we came. As soon as the Germans came, they burned it. In Lubraniec, yes. What they did is they took the rabbi when I was there, and I directly didn't see it because my parents wouldn't let me out. But they got him out, and he had to sweep the streets. And they had to let's say if you had to carry something with a wagon, they didn't have horses, but the Jewish people had to push it. And they took all the books from all the homes. They also came to my uncle. All the Jewish books, they ransacked this place upside down, and they burned it all in the middle of the marketplace. And they were doing all sorts of things which was very, very frightening. And every time a knock was on the door, because we tried to have closed all the time, I mean, it was no businesses going. We just lived in fear. And every time a knock on the door, my stomach was going like, I want to be sick and I can't be sick from fear. Because you see, the people living in Lubranec did not go so much through already what we went through. We are already having over a year behind all these problems. And they took first all the men. It was on the streets, a placard that all the men have to be on this, in this time, there and there, which was early in the morning. And my father went, and my uncle, he had 2 sons, as I told you before, and a daughter. And I remember I ran that time, I dressed myself and I ran, and lying in the, because it was not in the market, it was somewhere in the, outside the town, what I can remember. And I was lying in the bushes. And I thought, oh, my father was coughing. That's what I thought. Oh, I could hear his sound. Because you can imagine when the men left what state we were all in. We're saying, we knew they separating us. And my father used to say all the time, as long as we are together, whatever they do, as long as we are together, that's why we're running from one place to another, just to be together. And we never saw him anymore. Then we had a letter. In about 3 weeks' time, we had a letter that the people who are not so well and youngsters, young boys, are coming back. Okay, we waited. The time arrived. He never come back. They never come back.
None of them?
No. And after the men went, we had to live as we'd lived before. My aunt had some money, and the work was carrying on. We had to still go to the Germans to do the work. Who was giving us the work? No. Some men were left behind, but my uncle also went. Some men were left behind.
Wait.
Some men were left behind, I remember, because a friend of my cousins, Abram, his name was, he was much older than I. His friend was there, and they were business people, but they changed to decorating, and they were decorating rooms for the Germans. And they left them. That was a father and I think 2 or 3 sons. And they were left behind. And the friend of my cousin, he used to come and visit us quite often. And he used to bring us some food as well. Then after 3 months, till the men were taken away, they took all the women, 1 o'clock in the morning. And whatever only we could, we were allowed to take. Just
what you could carry?
What we could carry, we were only allowed to take. And I remember that Henry, the friend of my cousin, came and helped us to take the stuff, and then They were.
He was a German? Or
No. Oh no, Jew. A Jew.
I see.
But they were decorating. But they finished them off as well. No, but none of them are alive anyway, you see. So what they've done with them, I don't know in the end. Because after the war, I did go to Lubraniec and I did go to Aleksandrów. Nobody's alive, you see.
When you say they were decorating for the Germans,
Germans,
the
rooms.
people or the soldiers?
No,
the military?
No.
Yes,
This
yes.
friend of my cousins,
Yes.
with his two brothers and the father, were working direct for the Germans, decorating, doing up rooms.
Yes, but for the military?
No,
for the
maybe for the
occupied
military,
forces or for this- or
maybe
civilians?
for the civilians and for the military. This I am not sure what they were doing. And he was free to walk about. They were quite free to walk about
But
as
he
well.
wasn't paid. This was just work he was...
I don't know what they were doing. This I cannot tell you. I only know that they had quite enough food because he did come and got me, brought some food. And my uncle also had a textile business. And they had their friend who was a German, very, very close friend. And my uncle, as soon as the Germans came, gave a lot of materials to hide by these German friends, you see. And what he was doing as well, this friend of my cousins, that Henry, he used to go there and he would take a piece of material and sell somewhere and bring my aunt the money, you see, which helped us. And we were not hungry. And when, as I said, they took us one night, it was still summer. It was summer. When they took my father, it was very cold. It must be the end of the winter. But I remember it was very cold because when I was lying in the bushes, the steam was coming out of my mouth. And, you know, you remember such a silly things, but that's how I remember.
So the winter of 1940?
41,
41?
I think. 41, I think it was, yes, because in 40, when we went to this Krapierlager, it's 1941 we're talking now, I think. I think so. I don't remember. Anyway.
Was the Lubraniec, the place you were in Lubraniec, was that a ghetto?
No.
It wasn't?
No. It was only a small town. That's why they took all the women and sent to Litzmannstadt ghetto, Lodz.
Yeah.
That's where the trouble started for me. When I got there, we were, the people from Lodz were already in the ghetto. And people who were coming from other town were put together with the families of the people from Lodz. Litzmannstadt was German, Lodz was Polish. And we were living with a family. She had a son in one room, and myself and my mother. No bed, no nothing. But they were kind to take us. We used to have rations. Oh, I forgot to tell you that all the time we had rations. That's how we lived as well. We had rations. Even in Lodz, in Lubraniec, we had rations already. Cards, yes.
And what sort of food? Sorry,
It just was bread and potatoes and all this.
No soup?
Oh, no. We used to cook ourselves, flour.
Cook.
And then you see, Lubraniec being a small town, everybody knew my auntie and my uncle as well. So let's say it was a mill there, so one of the cousins used to go and got a sack of flour. And we used to do it ourselves, baked and all this.
Did you get together with other people?
No.
Kept
Just the
within
family. Yes. Just kept with the family because we were just scared.
Yes.
Anyway, now I'm going back to the ghetto,
To
Litzmannstadt ghetto. And that was just dreadful. That was a nightmare. You walk on the streets, people are dying, lying there, dying from hunger. Skeletons everywhere. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do here? Then from the people who came, we were, I don't know how I got there, but I got up somewhere where they were forming a children's hospital in a place called Marysinec, in the ghetto. A part of the ghetto was called Marysinec. I will spell it for you afterwards. And a lady was there called Maryla, who knew very well the president you call him, Rumkowski. He was a Jewish man. And his brother became the director, Rumkowski's brother became a director of the hospitals in the ghetto. And I don't know, some people said that this Maryla was a girlfriend of his, he was much older than her, I don't know, but living in the same town, everybody knew each other, which I did not know anybody, and I had a tough time. And no men, and it was very, very difficult for me. I went to her, and I said, look, I just come, in the, we haven't got where to live. We are in a term, my mother is not well, which she was not. As soon as they took my father away, she was going to pieces. And will you please take me? I can't go and back. Then I just starve. Will you please take me to do some work in the hospital? So she says, a child is going to look after a child. So I said, look, I can do the cleaning. I don't have to look directly after the child. I can do anything as long as I can live with my mother somehow. Anyway, I suppose people felt a little bit sorry for me, I don't know. She took me in. She took me in, and we had a little place to live there as well.
In the hospital?
No. I'm sorry, I am doing wrong. Then, when I got this job, we were paid. It was special money for the ghetto. There were factories in the ghetto, which I come afterwards and tell you what I was doing afterwards. That was true. I had a very tough time working in this hospital. But I kept myself always very tidy and clean. And I really worked hard, and I was an example to all the girls who were working there. Even when the president came to see how the hospital was running, I was an example.
What were you doing in the hospital?
Anything. You see, there were children, young children, with TB and boils. All over boils they used to have.
From malnutrition?
That's right. So what did they do? They used to call these injections autohemo, which you took blood from your bottom and put it in your hand just to circulate the blood better. You see, because they didn't have no medicine, we didn't have nothing. Autohemo. Anyway, and then they told me there, when I was working in the little hospital. So what did I do? I was cleaning, I was giving food around. They used to come soups with a big kettles, and I was just doing whatever it was necessary.
You didn't do any nursing?
Yes, I did wash them. Yes, I did wash the children, and I used to change the dressing. They taught me how to do it, the sisters, and I was doing. I worked myself up that I didn't have to clean afterwards.
Splendid.
You see?
The staff in the hospital, were they Jewish?
Oh yes,
All Jewish.
The whole ghetto was Jewish. The policemen, everybody was Jewish. Now, you had shops, which we could, also because you had rations. You see, the shops were only cooperatives, like grocery cooperative, green grocery. There were offices where you had to pay for your gas. Gas, we didn't have electricity, and even for your rent, for whatever you possessed.
If you didn't have a job and you didn't have
that was very bad.
money,
that was very bad.
You lived on ration cards?
Yes. Oh, I did live only on ration cards. I didn't have the money anyway. I had to live only on ration cards.
They didn't give you
no, but
money.
being in the hospital, working in the hospital, I had a little extra food. Because you see, when you give to the children, it was a little bit left. So, you work. So we all had to share between each other. In the hospital, it was very good. My mother still lived with these people. I used to sleep already in the hospital. But what I've done, I went to certain offices. I don't remember where and what, but I know we got a little room for ourselves, not far from Maryshinets. It was a little bit of a walk, about maybe a half a kilometer. That was a room which we had in the middle a cooker, no furniture, only a table and 2 chairs. I put a little curtain with a string where I hanged up whatever clothes I had, which I had very little in my mother's, and 2 beds. And in the same house, we had a co-op where they were distributing once a week bread. But it had nothing to do with me. I mean, I didn't have any more bread than anybody else, because they didn't bake the bread. They just distributed for so many cards. They knew you had to put your name down, that you're going to collect your bread there. And your name was there, and when you came, you had to come with a card, and they put a stamp onto it, you see.
Where did the bread come from? Was it baked
ghetto?
in the
I think
ghetto?
In the ghetto, yes. I think it was baked in the ghetto. So I also managed, during the day, to run to my mother with a bit of soup, you see. Now, another thing, no, this I come later to it. Let me finish with that story. The children were dying. There was not enough food, no medicine. There were children who didn't have no parents, because in Maryshinets, where did the children come from? Maryshinets was, they had like huts there, and there were children who did not have no parents. They were orphans. And that's why they came to this little hospital, because they lived there, they had school there, teachers where they were teaching them, and all these, they were orphans. And some children come from the main town, from the ghetto, I mean not town, but from the ghetto, the main part of the ghetto, and they were also going to schools there. But the children who were orphans were living there. And in every little hut, they had like a growing up person to look after them, who were teachers. And unfortunately, one day, lorries came, covered lorries, and they start taking all the children, pushing into the lorries. We were just lucky they didn't take the staff with, like the nurses. The children were going behind my apron, hiding themselves, crying. I don't know, did they know where they were going? Because I did not know where they were going. I really didn't. I really did not know what was going on. I was very, I don't know, I was very ignorant. And then we find out the children went into these lorries and they finished them off in the lorries. So the hospital was finished and Omarishiniec was finished. We didn't have any hospital there. I don't know what they done with the rest of the children. And I come back to my mother and start looking for a job. And I found myself a job knitting. They were knitting big tablecloths for the Germans. The German woman used to come, they used to choose the pattern, and that's how this factory was keeping themselves, and we used to get paid. I don't remember how much. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I was also, when I was in this hospital, working in the hospital, I got ill, very ill once myself. So my mother came and took my job, and she used to work instead of me there. And first time I saw my mother lying on the floor, washing the floors. But still she says to me, as long as you're better. I'm sorry I had to go back, I had to tell you this. When I was working in the factory, also everybody had to work in the ghetto. When you worked, you used to get a card or a book, I don't remember, and with this you every day they were centers where you used to go and used to get a soup. I didn't have to go because I used to get the soup in the factory. And when I was working in the hospital, I used to get it in the hospital. But my mother did not work. So I found her a job to work in a kitchen. I found her a job to work in the kitchen, and at least she was not hungry, but she was getting terribly swollen. She was getting ill in front of my eyes. When I was working in this factory knitting the tablecloths and serviettes, and that's how I taught myself knitting. And women who were wives of the men who were working direct for the Germans, or they had positions in a co-op or in the men, or they had positions in a office somewhere. The wives did not work, but they had to produce their jobs, that they did work. So mostly they belonged to this factory, the knitting factory. So they didn't have to knit. They had women who knitted for them, gave the work to them back, and they got the soup. But this soup was given to the person who was knitting. Do you understand? Like homework. We used to call it homework.
Yes, so they got extra soup that
yes.
way. Yes.
So that's what I was doing. Before my mother had a job, I did that work. So I used to work practically all night to do the job for the other women.
You're doing two people's
Yes,
jobs.
yes. For my mother to, I was just a father, a husband, and a daughter to my mother. She was going to pieces.
She was helpless, really.
She was just helpless.
Was she physically ill, or she was just...
She just physically and mentally, when they took my father away, the world fell down on her. Anyway, So some of the girls sitting in the back benches working used to do the homework, and they were caught. They were caught, and they stopped their soup. Unfortunately, I was the youngest one, but very energetic, and I started to strike. We strike. We didn't do any work because they were, you see, they were looking after the Jewish people, and they knew that some mothers are helpless and can't do the work, and the children are trying to help their parents to have this extra bit of food. So you look away, you just tell her stop doing it, and that's it. But not to take away the soups. So they arrested us. The whole group, I don't know how many of us were, 20 in a group. They were a big factory, it was few rooms, you see, and in that particular room where I was. And we stopped working and they arrested us. And they took us to the police, which was called Sonderkommando. And they used to take we were very lucky that night they did not come and arrest us and send us off. We were just lucky. But I'm sorry, I forgot about something. But my mother was already very ill. She was already paralyzed, because I remember when they arrested me, I asked the policeman, I told they were Jewish people, and I said, my mother is lying there starving, because I used to leave two chairs next to her. One with a, how do you call it, a potty, but
a potty, yes.
Not a potty, to slip on.
A bedpan.
Bedpan, because she was paralyzed on one side, on the left side, and she could lift herself up on this side to use it, and the other was with a bit of drink and some food what I had, because I used to buy in the ghetto, I used to buy peels from potatoes, used to chop it up fine and steam it on the frying pan with the steam, and I used to leave it for her with a piece of bread. And I used to get also, we used to get a monthly ration of oil, a little bottle, it must be about a quarter of a pint. So I used to give her every morning with a spoon, hoping that it might make her strong. Anyway, so...
You told the police that...
Yes, so he came with me. The policeman came with me and helped me to chop some wood and make a little fire and warm up against some warm drink for her. And I had to go back. But the next day they released us. They released us. Oh, what am I talking about? They didn't release us. They took us outside the ghetto. We had to pass the no, but I'm going too far back. They took us outside the ghetto. We had to work and pack direct for the Germans in boxes instruments which was heating up the engines of the plane.
This was a different factory.
Complete. We didn't go back.
Ghetto.
Yes, we didn't go back anymore to the knitting factory. They took us there. They probably already were planning, maybe when the Sonderkommando came in the night, but they were already planning to take us there to help them, you see. And my mother was never lying there, but the policeman came with me. He came with me that night, and he helped me to do the necessary for my mother. But I'm going so far. I think I'm I don't think, can I go back?
Yes, please.
Now, as I told you, in the same house where I was living was this cob with bread. I couldn't understand when I used to go with my book for the bread for myself and my mother, because the bread my mother used to get, but not the soup, you see, with it she didn't work. And the man who was in charge, it's lower than a director, I don't know how you call it in English, kierownik it was in Polish. Well, he always called me, and I used to be one of the first ones, not standing in the queue. And not standing in the queue, no, so I took the advantage and I just, after a day's work, and my mother was still all right that time when it happened. One day when my mother was working, I told you I found her a job in the kitchen where she had to peel potatoes, and it was quite a lot of dampness there and wet, but what could I do? Anyway, I'm at home, and he comes in, this man, and start making advances to me. So I ran out, left him in this room, and ran out quickly from the room. And of course I didn't get already my bread at first, but I had to wait till the last one to have the bread. And it was a man with 5 children. Would you believe it? That's how it was.
And a Jewish man?
A Jewish man, yeah. To be truthful with you, I used to say to myself I would never go to a Jewish country. I honestly, I was so bitter with the behavior of the people. So then, of course, before I didn't get any boost for the electricity, nothing. Everything was paid. I did not know what's happening. Suddenly, after all this, what happened, because I supposed to pay the bill was coming into the cob, you see, to the cob where this man was working. So anyway, suddenly I'm getting a bill to pay for the electricity. Okay, so I go to the office and I pay. So this young man, he was about 21, he wanted to make a date with me. And I never went out with any boys. I was 14 that time. And I didn't. And I come home and I said to my mother that this young man, she says, why don't you ask him to come here? And I said, Mom, what am I asking him to this beautiful place? She says, oh, what? Anyway, second time I go there, the following month, again. So I said, okay, you can come and see me. So he came, and his brother-in-law was in command was all the corps. So my bread I got it without a queue. My grocery I got without a queue. Not for anything. She was a nice young man. He just liked me. And we used to go out. The curfew was till 8 o'clock. And we used to work, you see, we used to start work early and finish early. Because they had to give us a couple of hours, 3 hours to do something, because it was the curfew. Anyway, and he used to go, he used to come, used to go out. I met his friends, and we spent always a couple of hours in the evening, till of course he put his arm around me, and then I'm finished again. I had to stand in the queues.
Oh. Oh. Well, where did you used to go?
Jennifer, I should live to my grandson bar mitzvah. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Though my mother used to tell me, if you bring me one sliced bread, more than you should, I throw you out. But she knew what was going on there. We have to live what we've got, she says, and that's it. And that's how it was, you see. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I shouldn't have done, maybe I should have done, maybe I should have some more food and my mother maybe would be alive, I don't know. Anyway, so.
Tell me, what sort of places did you go to with these friends?
Just to one other's houses, to other people's places, which had a little bit nicer places than I, because I told you, some people who were living there, we came already when the ghetto was formed. We had to go and stay with other families. And then I got this room, which I was very lucky. And then also I went to another office where they gave me the bedding, because we didn't have anything when we come there, you see.
And you didn't know anybody there?
Nobody there. Nobody.
Nobody at all?
Unfortunately, I had to stand in the queue and carrying myself, if we would get wood or if we would get some coal, I had to, or potatoes, I had to stand in the queue and I had to carry on my back everything myself. I didn't have anybody, because I did not know anybody, only just accidentally, as you can hear what I'm saying to you. Then when I was working in the factory, which I told you they took us afterwards, I met a girl there, and she didn't live far from where I was living, but she was with her whole family. The whole family was brought into the ghetto. They were from Lodz. They used to live in Lodz. She had two brothers, and the mother and the father, they were all there. And they were also better off, because the older brother had also some direct contact with the Germans, so they were not hungry. And the younger brother, who had also a little eye on me, he was working in a greengrocery factory, where he used to give me little notes, and I used to go there and I used to get some extra, if it was beetroots or carrots or potatoes, and it helped me. But he was a very nice young man, but again the same thing happened when he put the arm around me. I lost again, I had to queue again. But still, it was very, very tough. They used to closing the roads, and they used to start evacuate people. And when I was working in this factory, direct for the Germans, we used to have a little bit of extra soup. So I used to take a soup for my mother from there. But I couldn't go just direct the proper roads, because it was not allowed to leave there. And I had to go between they were only, from the ghetto to them, we had only ordinary fence. And I could get through it. But I had to go through the fields. And it was winter, it was very, very cold, snowy, and I had to go through these terrible, when the earth gets frozen, rats. And I don't know, but God was with me. I never fell running to my mother. Going back, I felt about 10 times, but God was somehow with me. And the director was also a Jewish man, and as my mother was so ill, I said to him, I went over to him once and I said, look, I'm not from Lodz. I am here with my mother, and my mother is very, very ill. Would it be possible for me to get her to the hospital? And he got her into the hospital. But then when my mother was lying in hospital, somebody told her that this particular man, I don't remember his name, was a very good-looking young man. He does a bit of business with the girls. So my mother said I should be careful, but he never, approached me or anything. And he tried to help me as much as he could. Even when they were giving rations for shoes, I had from him and I went to get a pair of shoes, and when I got home, so one was different than the other. But I was happy to have a pair of shoes. Yes. But anyway, the ghetto was the worst part for me. Seeing my mother in this terrible, terrible state. And when it was raining, it started to rain just where her bed was lying there. It was raining. I had to stand all night with the basin, because I couldn't move her. She was in the hospital for about a fortnight. They put some weight on her, and a weight on her leg, yes, to stretch her. They were stretching her. Yes, yes. And then they brought her back home. She was not better. She was in a terrible, terrible state. She was in terrible pain. She was all sore. Her bottom was sore. And my neighbor next door, they had only a little room. There were a couple living there. They said that somebody's got this ring. And I was never running in the night for this ring. She was screaming from pain. And it was terribly dangerous. And I got this rubber ring for her, and I had a terrible life. Terrible to see her in this terrible state. I just don't know how I got through it. I just don't know. And then when they started evacuating, and they were closing our road, so I quickly, before I went to work, I dumped her in a garden, and went to work and praying to God that they didn't find her.
In the winter this was?
No, that was not really winter. That was already like spring. I was in the ghetto for 1.5 years. Over nearly 2 years. And when I come back, I had to schlep her back, carry her. She didn't weigh anything. I was very ill. Her legs, like little worms, were on the legs.
But you mean they were coming during the day to take
people away? Yes.
Just at random?
Yes. And they were closing the roads. But I been working. They already done that when I was even working in the hospital. I remember they stopped me once, and I had this hospital uniform and a card where I was allowed to walk about, working in a hospital. That time already they were doing it, and I already dumped her that time once in the garden. And
did your mother know what was going on?
Yes, I think she knew.
Aware.
I knew. She was aware. She was aware, and we were starving.
Did you know where people were taken when you didn't know? You had.
I thought they were taking them to work. That's what I thought. But I knew that they could not take my mother. I mean, I would go already a long time myself, not knowing where they're taking me. But I couldn't leave my mother. You see, everybody was practically gone, and I'm with my mother there. I used to go to another room. Sundays they didn't raid. So Sundays I used to go to another place, and maybe it was a bit of flour there or something. When they took the people away, they leave something. So I used to go to places, and I used to take food and with some water. We didn't have any more. They didn't. Not yet. But when they took me away, the last time, I think it was the end of 43. When they took me the last time, I think it was the end of 43. It was a Sunday. Till now, I didn't go to work anymore. Till now, I was hiding myself in the cellar or in the loft. And when the Germans came and she was lying there, because I couldn't shift her anymore, when she was lying there, so she used to say that I went for the ambulance, they should collect her, that she's not by herself, because if she would say that she's by herself, they would finish her off, you see. And my daughter, and she spoke beautiful German, my mother. She spoke German and Russian, beautiful. And when they left, I come down again, you see. That was when one Sunday I just put some flour with water, I mixed in, I made a little fire to bake something to eat, like a bread, whatever you call it. 2 SS-men came. And I had my rucksack always ready there. My mother was lying there, and I just stood in the door. I was afraid even to go to say to her to say goodbye, because they would kill me and her together. I just stood in the door and I said, Baba, God should be with us. And that's how I left. I don't know what happened to her at all. They took me to the wagons there, and actually, when I was just going into the wagon, I saw the boy who helped me, the one when I was paying for the electric bills. And the wagon were full of people. In the corner was a couple with a baby, and they were trying to heat up with a candle some water or milk, I don't know. Before we went into the wagon, they gave us a bread. In the middle of the wagon was a barrel with water, which was not covered. And I was not concerned for myself. I was concerned for my mother. What's going to happen to her? I start to get... So all these people are on top of each other. The wagon started going. So the barrel was started to go backwards and forwards, and all the water's splashing around. Here people need to go to the loo, here people need to... it was just a nightmare. How long I have been there, I don't know. And usually, when I used to get up in the morning, not know what's going to be, when I was with my mother, I'm talking about, I used to put 2 dresses, 2 pair of stockings, we didn't have tights at the time, and shoes and galoshes standing in case they come and take me. But usually whatever I was wearing, they used to leave, you see, thinking that it will be the same performance. And one young man going in this train together, he says to me, what were you wearing so much? What you wearing in summer galoshes? I said, because whatever you wear, you will keep on. He says, yes, you must be joking. So they knew. He knew where we were going. I did not. When we got to Auschwitz, which I didn't know it was Auschwitz, I did not know nothing about it. I did not know about concentration camps. I did not know what was going on at all. When we got there, they told us, raus, 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 didn't let us take the clothes at all. And they start separating women from men. Cries. It was just terrible. The husbands were from wives, the mothers from sons. It was just a nightmare. I started to get diarrhea. I was sick and diarrhea, suddenly.
How did you get to Auschwitz, though? You said you were on the
trains.
On the barrow, and then they took you to the train.
No, the barrow was in the middle of the train with the water. If somebody wants to drink, should drink. But when the train started going, the barrow was wobbling from one side, and all the water was... Yes, that was in the train. I'm sorry.
Yes,
anyway.
How long was that journey?
I don't know. I think we were there in the morning. They took us, and we didn't get there where it was dark. How long we were going, or the night and day, I just don't know. We were all in such a state. We were collapsing there in the trains. As I said, when we got to Auschwitz, they told us to get off the train, And they start to separate, and the separation was the worst part I was by myself, but then I could see what's going on, and I got myself terribly ill. Thought, my God, now I left my mother, and they will finish her off. Anyway, and that's what I was concerned over, my mother. And then they separate the woman from the man, and we start going through the gates. The S-men were on both sides, and the girls, young people, they could see what state I was in. They had a bit of sugar, and they start putting sugar in my mouth to revive me. And when we are going through the gates, they were just holding me up, and it was left and right, left and right. I went to the right. They told me to go to the right, the assessment, and we had to be. They formed us like fifths, 5, 5, 5. We had to stay in 5 girls, and it was dark. It was dark, and they're starting to march us. And can you imagine the screams? The mother was going to the left, the daughter was going to the right, the babies going to the left, the mothers going to the right, or the mothers went together with the baby. I cannot explain to you the cries and the screams and tearing the hair off. Can you imagine? And they formed us in 5s, and we start marching. And as we stopped, they counting us, and every time they stopped, I had to sit down. I had to make business. And the girls are picking me up, giving me sugar, keeping me alive. I was very, very lucky. Very lucky, because I didn't tell you, in the ghetto when I was ill, I had 15 boils in me. When I told you before, you see, it's coming back to me. And when I got there, I was so clean on my body. I still got some marks from the boils. I was so clean, not one mark on my body. Because I explained to you later what's happened again with them sorting us out. They were sorting us all the time, you see. And when it was getting lighter, I could see they are like blocks. And a girl who comes out from a block, she has no shoes, she has no hair, her dress is far above the knee. So I thought maybe this block, maybe some girls got mad and they're keeping them together in a madhouse, not thinking that in a couple of hours I will look exactly the same. And we're marching, and they're counting us and marching and counting us and marching and counting us, non-stop counting. Till we got to a room, big room there, one of the blocks, full of assessment, and with the beds, undress in German. And there are also men, Jewish men, working with the striped, they look like striped pajamas. Of course, they had to do what they were taught to do. And in 1 second, we have been all undressed like God bore us. And beating, and doing this, and doing that. And we had to go all around, single, all around this room, going around and round and round, and they were still picking up girls and women, sorting out, all the time sorting. Who knew what they were doing? They were sorting to put in the gas chambers, but who knew it? I still was very ignorant. I still did not know what was waiting. And eventually, They put us in another place where they start shaving us everywhere, the hair, washing us on showers, and giving us dresses, just dresses, nothing else. And I knew why the dresses was getting shorter and shorter, because when you went to the toilet, didn't have no paper, so we were tearing the dresses off to wipe ourselves. I have to think a little bit, if you like to stop for a second. I forgot to mention, when I was in the ghetto with my mother, one day somebody said that people who were in the camp with my father were brought to the ghetto. I forgot to mention also that my father was taken to Fort Radziwiłł, which was near Poznań, and he was doing work there. They had to walk many kilometers to do the work on a railway station. I really don't remember exactly what he was doing, but he got ill. His leg, vein burst in his leg, and he was ill, so they put him in the kitchen where he was working, which was not such a hard work. And then, as I mentioned before, when we got a letter that they supposed to send these people who were not well and young boys, which was my cousin as well, supposed to be sent back home. But of course, as I mentioned before, they were never sent back home. So when I heard that people from Fort Radziwiłł were in the ghetto, I ran there to see it, to see who it is. They were surrounded by fences, wooden fences. But I mentioned to scrape a hole in it and start calling Krakowski, Krakowski. And one of my auntie's brother, who also lived in Lubraniec, he called me out. Who is calling? Who is calling? And I called him my name. So he said, oh, Uncle Shir and Abram are here. I will call them. But I said, before you go and call them, tell me what happened to my father and Mordechai, which was my younger cousin. So he told me, I have to tell you this, don't get upset, but they were sent to Auschwitz. And I said, what is Auschwitz? I didn't even know what he was talking about. So he told me, I better not tell you. One day you find out. Okay? When my uncle appeared, walking towards the fence with my cousin, it was a terrible thing to see. My cousin's eyes were bulged out, was thin like a rag. He could hardly walk. Funny enough, my uncle didn't look too bad. He was a big man always, and by losing weight was not too bad. But when I saw my cousin, my heart broke. It was just terrible. I begged them to get out from there. I said to them, though we've got only one room, and my mother is not well, but what we will have, you will have. We don't know where they're sending you. You haven't got the strength to work. I didn't realize that they're sending them to gas chambers. I thought they were sending them to work. Anyway, he said, it's better not. I don't want to be a burden to you. What will you do? You're fighting for yourself with your mother alone. He didn't want to come. Anyway, I said, I'll come and see you next day, and I'll bring you what I can. He said, don't worry, everything be all right. And that's what you're talking like through the fence. Anyway, a few days later they sent them off. I didn't know where and what, but then I found out after the war, they sent them to Auschwitz. And my father as well, because I met somebody in America who was in the same camp as I was, who helped me actually in Auschwitz, who was my cousin's friend, and I tell you later about it. Now, when we got to the trains and we got to Auschwitz, as I mentioned before, they separate the men and the women. It was terrible screams, it was terrible. The babies were taken away from mothers. It was just dreadful. And as I also mentioned before, I was in a terrible state. I think it was playing me up that I left my mother there, and my stomach was upside down. I had diarrhea and was sick, and the girl was like holding me up, and I went through. I went through to the right, which I knew afterwards. At the left, we're going to the straight away to the oven.
Can I ask you, do you know if you saw Mengele? Because
yes, I did. I tell you in a minute. He sent me to work. I tell you. And then, I mean, I never heard of Mengele. I didn't know nothing about Mengele at that time. Then they put us, as I said, we had to undress ourselves, and we had to march around, and they still were choosing people to I didn't know what, elderly women and people who are not so well built up, but very thin, and people who had spots on their body. Did I mention to you that in the lodge I had all these balls? Is that on it?
You mentioned that to me after we started,
That's
I think.
yes, that's what I thought. I forgot also to mention when I was in lodge which we didn't have enough food, and I had to share with my mother. I had about 15 balls on me, and they were doing this auto-hemo as well, these injections, and somehow when I got to Auschwitz, I was completely clear. I had little marks from it, which I still got it, but I was just clear. I think from hunger, I think I was more blown up, swollen, than getting thin. My mother was getting absolutely thin in my eyes, and I didn't. And that's what saved me. I also forgot to mention to you that I had a very, very good voice, and I was singing. And that helped me quite a lot in Auschwitz and the working camp. Now, when in Auschwitz, I was like a Schmuckstück. What that means, that people were not sent to work. And they were selecting us all the time. And you did not really know which one was going where. In the block, we had in the middle like a chimney going along the block.
Between the dormitory, in the dormitory between
it was not such a thing as a dormitory. It was a block which they used to keep horses before the war. And in the middle of this block, along the block, it was a chimney built from bricks. And the end of the chimney, you had this big, bunker, and that's where they're putting the fires in to make it warm, where the horses were staying there. Of course, it was not heated up when we were there. And the block Älteste, which was Jewish, these people were sent first to Auschwitz. People who were sent first to Auschwitz were either smuggling, making some business illegal, prostitutes, which had black books, and I never met among us political prisoners, no. Only because I was only among Jewish people. And she used to walk on this chimney, and she had a bed, and which didn't behave, booms, you see.
The Blockälteste.
Yes, yes. It was a Blockälteste and a woman who helped her, which I don't remember how they used to call her.
But these were both Jewish women?
Jewish women. I was under Czechoslovakian ones, and once I was under Polish one. Which actually the Polish girl was a sister of a young woman who was my instructress in the factory where I was doing the knitting in the ghetto. Yes. And the other girl was such a lovely girl, the instructress, lovely. And this one was a...
Martinet.
Yeah, they all were the Blockältestes. They used to have beautiful night dresses, lovely clothes, plenty of food. Anyway.
Who gave them?
The Germans, because you see, they were keeping them. They were the ones to do the dirty work for the Germans, you see.
Were the Germans using them?
Of course, and how?
They were sleeping with them.
Yeah, that's right. I tell you afterwards. Then when I was sent to Auschwitz, they started sorting us out. Of course, they shaved us and washed us and gave us all these dirty clothes. And I think I left when we were marching, didn't we? We were marching.
In fives?
Yes, and they were counting us and counting us.
Yes.
And then they put us in this big room where
Yes.
Right. And then they shaved us and all this, and they start putting us in the block. I was in Lager C. First of all, they were doing the tattoos. And then I was I was sent to a block C, and I was sent in block C, which was, we had banks, and the girls were living sleeping one next to each other. It was just terrible. Sometimes when we got up in the morning, you see, they were all electric wires, and some of the girls just finished themselves off by touching the wires.
They were bare wires?
Wires, and they were electrical.
Inside the
hut? Oh, no, outside.
The perimeter?
Outside.
Around the perimeter.
There were 31 blocks. No, wait a minute. I know it was number 31, but how many blocks were in the numbers in block C? All the blocks, it was called C, but I don't know what that means, C. ABC they used to call it. And in that C lager, they had, I was number 30 block first, I think. Don't remember. Or was it the man was the number C, number 30? I don't remember, but anyway, I was first sent to C block, C lager. Yes, C lager. And there, we had to get up very early in the morning, whatever weather it was. By 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, we had to stand outside, snow, rain, or whatever, and also in fifths, and we had to wait for the Germans to come and count us. And they came about 10 o'clock, and when the Germans counted us, they gave us afterwards the daily ration of bread and some drink which was looking greeny.
How much bread?
Very little, like a thick slice of bread, and that had to last all day long, you see. And then they gave us during the day a soup, so-called soup. And one day I was ill already, and on the sail-appeal I fell. On the sail-appeal where they were counting us. And they took me away, and put me in Lager B. But before then, I'm sorry, I have to go back. Before then, somebody told me, I don't remember if it was after the Lager B or before, somebody told me that my cousin's friend, my cousin's Abram's friend, Hennek, he 2 blocks in our lager, in Lager C, men used to come to do some work there, sewing, I don't know what they were doing there. And one of the girls from Lubraniec came to me and he says, listen, Hennek is there. He was Abram's friend, I'm sure he remembers you, he might help you. So I sneaked out one day and went there and calling his name out. A man came out, and that was his brother, older brother. He said, I told him who I was. He picked me up and he said to the man, if you'd see this girl before, now she's unrecognizable. And he told me that Hennek was not there, which block I was in, I told him, and he will come and see you. And the next day he came, and the block elders, when they saw a man, so they were in their glory, you see, and he introduced me to her, and he brought me bread the next day, and he told also the Hennek brought me bread, a half of a loaf the next day, and he brought me also socks, clogs, and kaftan. It's like a top of pajamas, and a scarf for my hair, and a little apron. And he also told the block elders that when he introduced me, that I can sing. So that kept me. I was singing, they asked me from one block to another, and I could move about because I was dressed. So I looked like a Stubendienst. A Stubendienst means that I'm doing work. So I could move from one block to another. But before this happened, I must also explain to you, they were taking us to the toilets. Not when you wanted, but when they wanted. They took us twice a day or 3 times a day, I don't remember. It was just also a block, and it was a middle, a big, big hole. The block was 1.5 lengths of this, and 3 times as wide.
So about 60 feet long.
And then we were standing around and doing our business. And when they said it's finished, so you had to finish. And that's why I realized that the girl who had short dresses, because that's where we were tearing the dresses to wipe ourselves. Of course, in the evenings, the camp was lit up because of the burning bodies. And I did not know what it was. The chimney was lit up night and day, night and day. I don't remember if it happened before Hennek brought me this, helped me with the food, and when I was singing, they used to ask me, and I had to sometimes sit there till 1 o'clock because they had a good time with the Germans, the block elders there, and I had to sing, and they were dancing. But when they went to sleep, I put everywhere, wherever I could, food, behind my apron, in my apron, wherever I could, and went to the block back, and I gave the girls to eat as well.
But can I ask you, you were singing for
the block elders
who were enjoying themselves with
That's
the
right.
Germans?
Yes.
So you were
yes.
going from one block of the Germans
They
to
asked me,
another.
they came to ask me, you see,
What
because...
sort of things were you singing?
all sorts of, I used to know all the Polish tangos and all this,
Yes.
and You know, and actually I used to sing Jewish songs, which to them it was, because my aunt in Lubranets, she had a lovely voice, and her daughter. And in the evenings, as you know, we couldn't go out, and she used to sing. We used to all sing. So whoever could sing, we were singing. And I learned from her 2 Jewish songs, because I couldn't speak very well Yiddish. But I learned 2 Yiddish songs, which I sang even after the war on the stage, because one song was about Russia, about Russian Jews.
What were they? What were these songs?
I don't know the titles, but
what's the first line?
In a russischen Dorf, in a Städtel a klein. And the other one was in a Litvisch derfu weit. You know, my husband remembers more the words than I do, because I used to sing to him. Oh God. I remind myself, I ask my husband, and next time when you come, I will tell you the words, more or less what I remember.
Did you have any accompaniment?
Not when I was in the camps.
No.
But after the war, on the stage, I tell you afterwards.
Yes.
And that's